The series is A Weary World Rejoices, and I have to be careful how I say that because it is a bit of a tongue twister, but it should sound familiar because we just sang it, right, in that Christmas carol, O Holy Night. But if there are two words that probably characterize the state of our world, weary world does feel like it fits pretty well, right? It's kind of overwhelming out there, like a lot of anxiety over all kinds of things, whether that's economics, whether that's politics, whether that's relationships that are struggling. Every third person seems to have some serious disease or ailment. Families are struggling. We're kind of just fighting sometimes just to keep our heads above water and muster any kind of joy around the holiday season. I just think a lot of people that I know of, that I come in contact with, a weary world seems to be an accurate description of what they're feeling. And that's okay. I want to just affirm that we don't have to have it all together or even feel particularly festive to feel the thrill of joy and hope of our Savior's birth. In fact, I think those moments of pain that make what Jesus did, what Jesus does, all the more powerful and relevant and important, right? What else can make us feel so much awe and wonder in the midst of so much trouble? It's a powerful thing, this season that we have. I love what the theologian Kate Bowler, she's out at Duke, she says Advent, or Jesus is coming, offers us permission to see the world as it is, right? But still really hoping for a future, even though we just get glimpses of that ultimate future. The biblical prophets, they did not shy away from hard truths. They just said them. They spoke plainly. They wept. They mourned. They complained about the brokenness, the pain, the suffering that they witnessed. Jeremiah, he's called the weeping prophet because my man was always going down. He saw the world not as it would be or could be. He just said it, and he saw the world through tears, is what theologians often say. But in the midst of that, he saw something shining through, right? He saw what was going to be coming. He says this: "The days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will fulfill the good promise I made to the people of Israel and Judah. In those days, at that time, I will make a righteous branch sprout from David's line, and he will do what is just and right in the land," right? He's coming. His very name means justice and truth and love and compassion and peace and safety and righteousness, and he will make all things right. Like, this is a weeping prophet who often speaks very, very harshly and depressing. This is what comes out of his mouth as well. There is hope in the midst of that. A world can be weary and rejoice, okay? We don't have to pretend away hard truths. God has called us to be truth tellers, right? But at the same time, when our eyes are fixed on Jesus, right, the one who embodies compassion and restoration and justice, right, we can do something that doesn't make sense to all people. We don't have to have like the little niceties, the little platitudes like, oh, everything happens for a reason, or what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. Those are just attempts to try and make us feel better, but they don't hold up when life actually smacks you, right? When life comes undone, when our hearts break, when our faith wavers. Those phrases, they just don't do justice. We need truths that stand the test of time, right? Jesus came to be with us, and he began working towards that restoration, that coming and that already, but not yet. We see glimpses of peace, of healing, and grace, of goodness, but yet there's still these other things that are weary that still exist. So what I want Grace Pointers to do in this series is each week live with a little bit of a smile, right? A sense of joy that was made available, right? If you just stop by and look at my dad's sweater, and that should take care of it for you, right? We want to laugh. We want to have fun. We want to make memories, right? We know the world has plenty of problems, but we also know the one who can act, who cares about them, who wants us to rejoice because good news has come and we're meant to experience great joy in the midst of all those other things that happen. Christmas is exactly what we need. It's not always easy. It's not always calm, but it's exactly what we need. So that's where we're heading throughout this season. But let me go back to the carol here for just a second. It's so interesting. This song says there's a thrill of hope, right? In the chaos of the holy night of Jesus' birth, the thrill of hope that these people that were putting their faith in God and longing for the hoped Messiah that would come, right? That day had finally come. and it would be different than all other days and just set the world in a whole new direction. I'm praying today that if you are here, you're listening online, and you find yourself in a weary state, that you would hear and be able to rejoice in the midst of that, that you would be able to feel the thrill of hope that God offers in the midst of that. Even in the chaos of the night, understand there is a new and glorious morn that is coming, right? That's what I want you to do, because every time we just move forward and think about the holy night, Jesus does something every day with him, right? One day can change everything, right? So that's where I want us to think about. That thrill of hope. Hope's that's a fun word for me. It's a powerful thing, hope, right? In all senses of the word. There's a story of a P.O.W. camp in Vietnam. Major Kushner was there, and he had a young Marine with him in that camp. He was 24 years old, healthy, and when he was caught, he decided he would try and cooperate with the Viet Cong, and said, if you promise to let me go, I will cooperate, I will do all that you asked me to do. And they said, sure, great. And so he did. He was a model prisoner, and after a while, it became clear this dude wasn't going anywhere, right? They were not going to let him go. They were lying to him. And when that realization took hold, Major Kushner just said, I just described, he became a zombie, right? He refused to do any work. He refused and rejected all offers of food and encouragement. And he simply just laid in his cot, sucked his thumb, and within 2 weeks, he was dead, right? Right? One word to sum that up would be hopelessness, right? That's what he felt. And there's doctors that often, from World War II, Korea, Vietnam, that dealt with different POWs and things of that nature, said that there was a lot of folks that suffered from just give-up-itis. They just did not have the hope. The human spirit needs hope to survive and to thrive. It's necessary. But the hope that I'm talking about today, the hope that we sang about today, is different than the hope that the world offers, right? They have, the biblical hope has just a little bit different text to it. Same definition sometimes, but big, huge differences. Like, hope in our world often means wishful thinking, right? That we pick up our phones or we ask Alexa, what's the weather like outside? Please don't let it be hot again, right? That's what we do. That's wishful thinking, right? Or we turn on the TV and hope I hope my team doesn't lose again, right? Or whatever, right? Wishful thinking is a hopeful feeling that somehow, in some way, things are going to go the way I want them to, even though I have no control over them, right? No power to change the situation. I'm just hoping that. So wishful thinking doesn't change reality. It just makes me feel a little better for a moment, right? That's what wishful thinking does. That's not biblical hope. Another kind of biblical hope is blind optimism, right? It's great to be optimistic. I'm optimistic myself in that regards, but sometimes optimists, we see things through rose-colored glasses, right? We overlook problems as if they don't exist, or we bury our heads in the sand. If we can't see them, they're not there, right? We turn our eyes away from the ugliness of the world and pretend that everything is fine all the time, right? And we can pretend that or not. That doesn't change the fact that those things exist. That's not biblical hope. Or even like determined dreams, right? Where you have it's another kind of hope where you're like, I have a lofty goal that I want to set, and maybe in a month from now you might be setting some of those, and of what I want to do. And I set these resolutions out there, and there's nothing wrong with having a determined goal and a place, a direction which you're going, but those are often, there's restrictions to our own limitations and the things that are outside of our control that can impact those goals, right? So that's not hope, right? Let me contrast that there. For most people, hope is something that they do, okay? Hope is something, in the Bible, hope is something you can have. It's something you can possess. It's something that you can own, grab hold of. It's very different, right? For someone who's a follower of Jesus, the definition of hope is a confident expectation that God is willing and able to fulfill his promises to us. That's hope, right? His great mercy, his gift, Hebrews 6 tells us that we have this confident expectation about that through his life, death, and resurrection, we have an inheritance that cannot perish, that is waiting for us. There's a hope and a strong, trustworthy anchor for our souls that we can hold on to. See, our hope is only as good as what it's attached to, as what it's anchored to something, right? In and of itself, hope has no power, right? We might fool ourselves into thinking everything's okay, but the only way, right, hope has any real power is if it's anchored into God's power, right? That's where hope gets its real power source from. And as we keep that hope in mind, I want to think about that phrase, new and glorious morn, right? The hope that something is coming, that the next day is there. I want to take you back to the Old Testament. If you want to turn there, it's Lamentations chapter 3, a real cheery book for Christmas time, right? You hear the lament in there. The year is 586 BC, right? Jerusalem has fallen, right? The temple has been destroyed. The way that they practice their faith, obliterated. People are separated from their families, right? The elite are it's just chaos and misery and destruction, and people are distraught, as you can imagine. And there's Jeremiah, the weeping prophet, dropping his lament, whining and hurting along with everyone else, it's a weary world, gang, okay? And in chapter 3, this weird thing happens in the midst of a book of complaining about what's happening, why it's happening. He says, I've been deprived of peace. I've forgotten what prosperity is. My splendor is gone. All that I'd hoped for, right? So he is down that place. I remember my afflictions, my wandering, my bitterness, the gall. I remember them all, and my soul is downcast within me. He's not covering his eyes. He's not plugging his ears. He is living in that presence. He's acknowledging life is difficult. And then he goes on, and he says, yet I call to mind, and therefore I have hope, right? I know it's there, right? Because hope is something you can possess. He goes, I know it's there. I've just suppressed it. I've just pushed it back. I got to bring it back to the forefront of my mind and call it there. He says, there I find peace. I remember this truth. I have a hope because the Lord's great love cannot be consumed. It doesn't go away. It's always there. I have that hope. His compassions never fail, right? They're new every morning. And then he kind of loses himself a little bit in there. He says, I say to myself, the Lord is my portion, therefore I'll wait for him. The Lord is good to those whose hope is in him. The one who seeks him is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. I love that good news. It's right there. The Lord is my patient. He's there. It's amazing what a new day can bring, right, with Christ. I'm going to show you just 3 truths that stick out to me. Number 1, a new day with Christ brings exactly what we need. I didn't say want, I said need. Exactly what we need. Lamentations says this, that the Lord is my portion. I will wait for him. Lord's my portion. It's a fun phrase. Most scholars, I agree with them in this. It's a reference back to the Israelites wandering in the desert. And that when they were out there, they needed to eat in the desert. And God provided manna from heaven every single day in the exact portion that they needed. They couldn't hoard it. They couldn't take more than they needed to. It would rot and not be good the next day. And it was teaching them that they needed to rely on God every single day of their lives, right? Jesus says something similar when he teaches us how to pray. What does he say? Give us this day our daily bread, right? Daily, we need to be trusting. I need God every single day, right? I call this to mind, Jeremiah says. He's my portion. He's exactly what I need. And that's the good news. I want you to understand, God is already in tomorrow. He already has everything you need for tomorrow. It's already there. That's who we serve. You have a marriage, a relationship that's struggling. God is tomorrow. He has what you need in order to help you break through and start again. If your body is feeling weak today, God is in tomorrow. He is your strength. He has strength ready for you. If you are down and you are depressed today, He's already in tomorrow. He is your joy. He wants to lift your head. That's who God is. A new day with Christ brings you exactly what you need, and it's His presence, right? His reality, His strength, His power, His goodness. That's what He says. I'll wait for Him. The second thing he tells us in this is that Christ brings to us the hope to keep going. It's a simple thing, but I just think it's so, so crucial. The thrill of hope, when all we see is darkness, there's a belief that this chaos, this night is just never going to go away. Jeremiah says, hang on. Hang on to the morning, right? The Lord is good to those whose hope is in Him, right? Someone said this, I think it's interesting. They said that people can live 40 days without food. We can live about 8 days or so without water. We can live 4 minutes or so without oxygen, but about 30 seconds without hope, right? That when we lose the sense that God can get us through this, it's just a dangerous place to be. I just think there are so many people in this world today trying to get by and survive in a hope-deprived state, right? They're not clinging to it. They're struggling to find places to put their hope, and so we're putting them in all these different places, and they're coming up short, right? Right? They're putting them in the stock market, and they're like, that thing is a yo-yo, and it's dangerous and risky, right? We're putting it in our company or our career, and it's going to let you down. You're putting it in another person who's there sometimes, but they can't always come through. We're putting it in just some other outcome, and it's not turning out the way we hoped for. We're putting our hope in the wrong places instead of the one who can be trusted. I love what Hebrews says. He goes, let us hold unswervingly. It's just one of my favorite biblical words there. Unswervingly to the hope we profess, because He who is promised is faithful. I love that picture. I want to hold. I just think about whether it's like an Indiana Jones thing or something. I just think of this person just holding on to a rope, knowing I can't let go. This is what's going to get me through, holding on to this thing, right? The hope that we profess, don't ever let go. The challenge today, I believe, is that we're letting go of hope, that thing that will help us get us through that, and we're grabbing at other junk, right? We're letting go of hope and holding on to fear and anxiety, right? That's what we're doing. And we're letting go of truth, hanging on to all the lies the evil one is chucking at us. Right? We need to do the exact opposite, right? We need to let go of fear. We need to let go of anxiety and stress and panic and doubt and grab hold of the hope that we profess and hang on like nobody's business, like your life depends on it, right? We have had such a high amount, I feel like, of suicides in the news and around us recently that just always, suicide hits me a little bit differently than some. All of us, it wrecks us. My nephews go to Los Osos up in Rancho, and they had 2 students within a month follow each other in a suicide jump. And heartbreaking. A couple weeks ago, my daughter's school, a girl jumped off of the second story, and luckily she lived. But just that it's heartbreaking. I had my brother, I have 2 brothers that have already passed. My younger brother, he passed away when he was 13 to suicide. My other brother passed away to drugs, and it was they just couldn't see hope in the next day, right? They were not able to see the hope that God could have provided for them. Don't lose hope. I just want to just stay here for just a second, and somebody needs to hear this, that don't give up, don't surrender, don't cash it in, right? It's dark. I understand that. I want to acknowledge that, but that's not the whole story. Don't give up. It's a weary world, right? But there is a thrill of hope in the midst of that. That song is theologically accurate. There is a thrill of hope, and even in a weary world, you can find joy. A new day is coming. One day with Jesus can change everything. I would give anything to tell those kids, to tell my siblings, oh man, the sun's going to rise tomorrow. Hang in. Hope comes just one day with Christ. A new day with Christ, the final thing, the help. He gives the hope and the help that we're actually seeking. What those things are. Seek it from the right place. You have to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. Some of you might be here today, and what you need are listening today, and it's salvation of your soul. It's to turn your life over to Christ, and that's here, that's ready for you. Many of you, most of you, have already been welcomed into the family of God and born into it, and you're learning today that God's salvation is way bigger than just your soul, right? God is up to more than that. He didn't stop saving when you said a prayer. God doesn't stop saving, period. Maybe today you need to be saved out of some difficult situation. You need to be saved out of a difficult relationship. You need to be saved out of an addiction. God does not stop saving when you do that. I stand amazed at what God wants to still do, but we limit what He can do in our own minds, right? We stop looking to Him after one thing happens, right? God has so much more. One day with Him, just one more day with Him, can change everything. There was a guy named Lazarus in the New Testament who had been dead for 4 days to the point where he was starting to rot and stink bad. Everyone lost hope. Why wouldn't they? Jesus shows up, looks at the tomb, looks at the grave, and says, Laz, get up. Come on out. And he walked out of there because it's amazing the difference that one day with Jesus can make. There was a woman who had been suffering for 12 years of an illness, right? 12 years of pain, embarrassment, humiliation, torture, isolation, suffering, debt, all there every day, the same day after day. You know, talk about agony, talk about weary. And one day she meets Jesus and she touches the hem of His cloak and bam, she would tell you, it's amazing what one day with Jesus can do if you give yourself over to Him. There was a man, 38 years, would be carried and set by the pools of Bethesda in order to try and be healed. He was unable to walk. Jesus walks up to him after that and says, do you really want to be healed? Then get on up. And the man got up, picked up his mat, and walked home by himself. One day with Christ changes everything. Some of you need to hear it because you're in a weary state right now. And I'm telling you, there is a thrill of hope that you can cling on to. There is. There is joy to be found. There is a new and glorious morning coming. I promise you that. You may look at your marriage, your relationship right now and think, it's not as it should be. I understand that, but I'm telling you, bring Jesus into the middle and watch what difference one day with Him can make. Some of you are sick or hurting in the body, or you have someone you love who is sick and struggling. I'm telling you right now, we serve a God who wants to heal. And whether He heals in the way we think He should or whatever, like His presence, His goodness, it's amazing what difference just one day with Christ can make. Some of you right now, it's the night. I understand that, right? It's weary when the darkness is out there, and you're reminded of that. But Jesus, right, in that night, that holy night that took place, He came in the middle of that night. And the next day, He was here. That next morning, He was present, and it changed everything. He gives us the hope to keep on going. He gives us what we need, and He helps us to find what we are seeking. Romans 13 says this, understanding the present time, the hour has already come for you to wake up from your slumber, because our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed. Right? The night's nearly over, Paul says, and the day is almost here. So let us put aside the deeds of darkness and put on the armor of light. I just love that. For some of you, that is turning your lives over to Jesus for the first time. For others of you, that's salvation from some form of darkness that just has a hold on you. The night is almost over, right? The sun rises, and the sun has risen, right? And we have a thrill of hope, right, in the midst of a weary world. But yonder breaks, it says, right, and a new and glorious morn is here. Let's rest in that. Let me pray with you. Jesus, thank you for coming in the midst of whatever it is that we were dealing. I know so many stories of those that are in this room where you came in the midst of their dark times, in the midst of their hard times, not just once, twice, sometimes 30 times you have come and you have brought hope in the midst of a time that felt just so overwhelming. I pray, Lord, that they're in this room, they're online, that are watching, that they would just reach out and grab on to the hope that they can hold on to, and that they would not let go. They would trust that you will be with them all through the night, and that you have something amazing come the morning. I pray, Lord, that you would bring healing where it's needed in relationship, in body, in mind, in spirit, Lord, that you would just bring what we're truly seeking is to be in your presence and to share that with the entire world. We pray that in your name. Amen.